Good noontime!
Good noontime, everybody.
Welcome. Welcome to our Thursday edition of Good Noontime as we talk about Mark 4:21 to 25.
I totally thought you said thirsty. That's probably because I'm thirsty for coffee.
Coffee. I got my coffee.
I had to go find mine. I was telling Zach that sharing an office with anybody is hard, but also with, someone who has to take over your spots and will trade Zooms. It's hard. So I had to find the coffee. It was like an Easter egg hunt.
Well, there you go. So,
it's the wrong season though, Zach.
For Easter? Well, yeah. Easter and Christmas, it's more or less the same thing, right?
No, Easter's like your favorite season.
You're right. Easter is way better than Christmas.
I like Christmas.
Oh, see, you can do Christianity without...
You have to share.
Oh, yes, you do need to. You do Christianity without Christmas. You cannot do Christianity without Easter.
Yes.
And the proof in that is, in fact, the Gospel of Mark, because the Gospel of Mark has no birth narratives at all.
You tie it all into
and you still get the whole gospel.
See, you tie it all in. Share to a group.
There we go. So, for those of you who are watching, welcome. We are trying something a little bit new here. Normally, we just hi Sheila. Normally, we run this on just Facebook. Today, we're streaming this to both Facebook and YouTube as a test to see how our StreamYard, that's our platform that we're using this on, works with both Facebook and YouTube at the same time, because this is how we are going to be doing Sunday. So you are guinea pigs. Welcome.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. All right.
We have 7 people. And also, see, the other thing that we did today is I'm also in as the host. So I can do this because the other day, Zach.
I'm doing it.
So yeah, the other day Zach was messing around and I could not do anything, but now I can fire back and I can play around too. So we both are hosts and we both get to mess around a little bit because, again, we're playing around with Sunday. So this is the platform that you'll be able to see us as we're in different places, but all together as one large congregation and one large staff.
Yeah, the key on that for Sunday is that it shouldn't affect you, what we're doing. You should still be able to go to where you normally go for Facebook or YouTube or whatnot. Hi, Shirley.
Hi, Shirley.
Glad you're here watching. So that'll be, you'll still be able to do what you do, and but we'll be doing something completely different. So,
okay. Sheila, what's the temperature down there? And did you get your bamboo curtains hung up?
Ooh.
Yes. So
bamboo curtains.
Yes. Yes.
Very cool.
So Zach, today you're going to lead us in some. You said yesterday that you were going to look up the end of this passage specifically to talk to us a little bit more.
Yep.
About what it means. Oh, are you okay, Zion? I think he's all right. He's just wearing headphones over there and watching his video. So
okay. Well, I have some comments to make, and so we'll kind of chew on that. Before we do that, do you want to read the story?
Yes, I will do that. I forget about these things. Oh, 85 and sunny. And yes. Oh. Well, it's
here.
It's like it's gonna be 70s today. So I'm okay with that. Maybe check in when I have snow on the ground, and then I won't be. All right. Then Jesus asked them, would anyone light a lamp and then put it under a basket or under a bed? Of course not. A lamp is placed on a stand where its light will shine. For everything that is hidden will eventually be brought into the open, and every secret will be brought to light. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Then he added, pay close attention to what you hear. The closer you listen, the more understanding you will be given, and you will receive even more. To those who will listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given. But for those who are not listening, even what little understanding they have will be taken away from them.
Okay. So I want to begin with a story. So when I was in high school, I did a lot of theater in high school, still do as much theater as I can. And I was working backstage for this particular show. And our tech director had his, so we all have our headsets on. We have these big old headsets and microphones and battery pack and all that stuff so that we can talk with our stuff backstage. And it was one of the performances, maybe it was one of the tech rehearsals, I can't remember for sure now, but our tech rehearsal, our tech director had his system on, his set on, and we were all sitting there waiting for the show to start, and all of a sudden we started hearing this tinkle. And we're like, is somebody running water? What's that sound? And then all of a sudden you hear him say, "Oh my goodness!" and click. So he was in the bathroom, and he was doing what needs to happen, but he had his microphone on.
On, yes.
Yes. So yeah. So one of the things that Jesus is talking about here is warning us that the microphone is on, and it's going to be on. And so what we say matters. What we say is being heard, and can't be hidden. So that's something to remind ourselves. But also, he's not just talking about us specifically, but he's also talking about himself. So, Jesus is speaking. You don't cover it. You don't cover that microphone. You just let it go. Everybody's going to hear it. One of the things that Jesus has been doing in this gospel is telling people to not proclaim what's happening, right?
Right.
People's like, "You're the Messiah. You're the Son of God," and he's like, "Shh, don't tell anybody." Yeah. And part of what he's doing here is shifting that gears and says, yes, right now the microphone is turned off, but it will not always be. And so prepare yourself for that time when the microphone is turned on and ready to go. So he's saying, here's a quote from N.T. Wright. He says, "I'm telling you these things now in secret, but the reason for announcing the kingdom, for bringing God's light into the world, is so that everyone will see it." So this is in part what Jesus is talking about, is that this message of the kingdom coming is for everyone. It's coming. It's going to be here. So prepare yourself for it. Which is where the "if you have ears, then listen" statement comes in here, right? If you are hearing this, then listen to it because it's important. And in this, then we get both a promise and a warning here. And this is kind of key to what's going on. The promise is, don't worry, this kingdom message will be public knowledge soon. So don't worry about that. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
And the warning, though, is make sure you're listening, because this is important stuff and you need to know it. So that's where the beginning part comes in. And then he goes on, and this gets, and in your translation, I actually like it because you talk about listening. And the more you listen, the more you're going to get out of this.
Right.
In this section here, the idea is, here's another quote from N.T. Wright. Jesus seems to be telling his followers that the level to which they pay attention to what his teaching tells them and teaches them will be the level at which they will receive the benefits of the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So to the degree we are able to recognize that this message of the kingdom coming into our world, we can recognize that and see it and participate in that, the greater we'll be able to embody that. So pay attention, think about it, recognize it as important, and it will become more to us. And so the warning then, on some level, is if we let things kind of slide and don't take this message of God's breaking into the world seriously, then we will get to a point where we cease to be able to recognize what God is doing in the world, and we won't experience the blessings that come with it.
Mhm.
So that is kind of what he's talking about. And what I thought about this as I, was reading this earlier today was the idea of grace. And Wesley talks about prevenient grace and justifying grace and sanctifying grace. And the good news is that God's kingdom is breaking into this world, and that's a prevenient grace. It's a grace that speaks to us and enters into our lives whether we realize it or not. And it's important that it is, but whether we recognize it or not, that doesn't change where it is. When we get to justifying grace, this is that spot where we recognize, and now this is a point where we're in justifying grace. We are made right with that prevenient grace, with that good news, and now we can delve into that in a way that recognizes that we are now part of God's family and that this is important. And then the sanctifying grace is one of these things that really only happens if we actively participate. If we don't actively participate in this good news and in the proclamation and in the living of this good news, then we will not experience it. That doesn't mean God's grace isn't there. It's that we won't experience it in the same way. And so here is part of what I think Jesus is saying in this passage. If you have something, you'll be given more. If you hear this, if you recognize this and take it seriously and dig deeper into it and make it more a part of your life and shape your life such that your life matches what Christ is calling us to live in the kingdom, then you will experience this to greater and greater abundance and more and more. And the warning is, if you have heard this, but you don't take it seriously, then what you have taken seriously will slowly erode away until eventually you don't have anything, and you won't be able to experience the blessings that come from that sanctifying grace. That doesn't mean that the prevenient grace, the justifying grace, isn't there. That's still there, but our ability to process that and to make it part of our lives will erode away. Mm-hmm. And there's a warning there. Take this seriously and recognize that taking it seriously means changing how we approach the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this also fits into then very much with what Jesus was talking about in the previous section when we were talking about the parable of the sower, where when we are in good soil and we are processing that in this way, then the fruitfulness of that can come to abundance. And we have to be a little bit careful because our metaphors are slightly different here, because if we're the seed, then we don't choose what kind of soil we're in. And so that's one metaphor. And this is a slightly different metaphor, that we have the ability to take our lampstand and cover it with a bucket or a bushel or hide it under the bed, but we are called to not do that. So it's not our light, it's Christ's light, but we have the capacity to hide it. And we are called to not do that, to let it shine and to let that good news come through us.
Right.
Does that make sense? Does that
change
how this works?
Yeah, and I think it also matches up with the conversation that we were having with Darwin in the comments too, about the difference between sort of saying, sort of throwing up our worries that we have or our anxieties up to God and saying, oh, let them be God's stuff, basically, versus the invitation for God to be here and present with us and among us. Because it makes me think of, it's called Grounded, and it's on my bookshelf, and it's by Diana Butler Bass. It's a book, and it talks about how for so long we've heard and we've had preachers preach on, and the theology is that God is like up there, right? That everyone, like when they pray or when they talk about God, there's like this stairway up, and that, you know, there's this urethral heaven, and that's where God resides. But in the book, she talks about how God's in the soil, and God's out there. God is, when you look around, God's in God's here among us, and that everything we do now here should be about inviting God's presence now and here, because that's where God is. God's not just up there, but God's, you know, all around and within and among. And everything that we do and say should be about the light of God within us. And so this practice this week was about, how do my actions and how do my words invite God to be among what I am thinking and saying and doing, and how does my mindset, and actually all of the practices that we've done the past couple weeks, as we're trying to navigate sort of what we're feeling and how we're interacting with the world around us, especially as we're navigating 2020, that brings, is about inviting God's presence here, even in the little things, even in the things that, you know, it's just going to the store. You know, who would have thought going to the store could be so anxiety provoking? But that is where God resides, in that.
Yeah. And that's actually what, because keep in mind, if you go all the way back to Mark chapter 1, Jesus, the good news is the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and trust in the good news. The whole point, Jesus' kingdom message in the Gospel of Mark is about God's place. It's not up there. It's coming into our space. It's coming into our messiness. It's coming into our COVID-ridden country. It's coming into the fear of going to the grocery store. It's coming into the virtual worship and communications that we have in our present day. God's place is coming into here, and the invitation is from Jesus. Open your eyes, see it. Open your ears, hear the presence of God. And now that you have done that, recognize that light is shining, and let it shine.
Yeah. I'm also brought that we've talked. We've talked. You and I have talked.
I'm on the other side.
I've talked about the image of the sower, and how the sower just throws the seed, right? Like there is no, and how the light, Christ's light, just throws the light. It doesn't matter where that light goes, who that light touches. It's not like I'm like, oh, you don't get a ray of light. No. It's not like I get to decide these things. It's just, I just don't cover it. And whomever it is that touches, whoever sees that, that's incredible. And however that's received, it's not my business to decide. It is what it is. And however that grows and changes and affects someone, that's God's. I just don't mess with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's here again, that's what he's saying, I think, in this passage, you know, just the light goes on the lampstand, letting it shine, filling the entire room, wherever it is, and just recognizing that the more we are able to allow that light to shine through us without worrying about where it's going, but just letting it shine, the greater impact it will have. And that's the joy of being, and it's the promise and the warning of being a follower of Christ. So those were my thoughts.
Good thoughts.
next week,
Next
we are going to continue in chapter 4. We might be, no, we won't be finishing chapter 4 next week. We've got a couple more weeks in chapter 4. And we're going to talk about more seeds and more parables and such.
Yes, we might have to sort of so next week is a short week because it's Thanksgiving week. So we might have to condense and mold and figure out how we're going to do it because not only is Thanksgiving on Thursday, so we will be eating Zach will be eating some turkey. I will be eating sweet potatoes and some other stuff because I don't
vegetarian.
I have a frozen bird in my freezer. I came home and Chris was like, I got a turkey from work, and I was like, what is a bird doing in my freezer? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, well, what if we can make it? And I turned to Zion and he's like, ew. So I don't know. I might make it and give free away.
There you go.
So we might have to condense or record some of these, but we will figure out what next week will look like and come to you in some way.
Yep.
So next week we'll bring some more parables, it looks like.
Yeah. And, this is important because there aren't a whole lot of parables in Mark's gospel. So we know from the whole story of Jesus from other gospels and other places that parables are a big deal. And so if Mark doesn't have very many of them, then that means that each of these parables are very important and they say something very significant. So that will be part of our conversation next time. So,
sounds good.
All right.
See you then.
So we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.